This video is brought to you by PrizePicks. Whether you love him or you hate him, whether you think everything that he does is great and you argue for the greatness of everything that he does, or you argue against it, there is no denying that these last 2 years, the Browns have been firmly in the grip of Andrew Berry when it comes to control over the organization. Nobody has demonstrated more control over this team's day-to-day operations than Andrew Berry. Unlike in previous years where you could debate whether Andrew had a big hand in certain decisions being made, there's no denying since 2025, he is the steward, as he describes himself, of the Cleveland Browns organization, the guy tasked to take care of this thing that he does not own, but he is the caretaker of, the primary care provider for. He was head first in that head coaching search. There's some debate on whether he got his guy there or not, but being in charge doesn't mean you always get what you want. It just means that you usually get what you want. And then you look at the moves the Browns have made, how they've maneuvered. Andrew Berry certainly has had more range of movement there over the last couple of years. There's also another thing that Andrew Berry has kind of done that is pretty impressive, which is the biggest thing that's been looming over the Cleveland Browns, I think, over the last 4 years. Since the Deshaun Watson trade, the biggest impact that trade has had on this team isn't the contract, right? As much as we hear about the contract, right, and how much that hurt the Cleveland Browns, that's bullshit. The contract doesn't matter. Nobody cares about the contract. The contract didn't really cost the Browns anything other than money. Like, the only person that I really care to hear complain about the contract is Jimmy Haslam, because he had to pay the contract out. But everything else, the contract got managed pretty well. It didn't cost us anything. Like, the reason the Browns traded Myles Garrett had nothing to do with the contract. They were able to give him his money, right? This wasn't about money at the end of the day. The Browns didn't lose any players because of money over time because of that contract. It's a myth how much people said that contract was going to affect you. It didn't affect you that much. It was just money at the end of the day, and the Browns were really good at managing money. And as much as people thought that the Browns' strategy to minimize the impact of Deshaun Watson's contract was going to blow up in the Browns' face, it hasn't, and it likely won't blow up in the Browns' face. So the contract, overrated. Underrated, though, is the draft compensation that the Browns gave up in that Watson deal. 3 first-round picks, a 4th-round pick, 2 4th-round picks, and a 3rd-round pick. That is what the Browns gave up to acquire Deshaun Watson. The Browns gave up 3 first-round picks, a 3rd-round pick, and a 4th-round pick, and got back a 5th-round pick to get Deshaun Watson. That is the price that hurt the Cleveland Browns. So effectively, that right there, the fact that we had 5 selections turn into 19 starts, and of those 19 starts, 5 of those games were probably around what we were hoping for when we traded for Deshaun Watson. That is the thing that hurt the Cleveland Browns the most, right? Like, imagine if Andrew Berry had a 3-year run of first-round picks where all 3 years of those first-round picks weren't useful to the team anymore. He would be fired like by now if that were the case. Now, because the circumstances with the Watson trade are a little bit unique, and because we know who pushed for the trade, likely ownership, we know who to blame for that situation. We know who's taken blame publicly for that situation. But think about the impact that would have. 3 first-round picks, a 3rd-round pick, and a 4th-round pick, and all the Browns ever got back from that was 19 starts, maybe more, in 5 good starts out of 19. That's a disaster. Now, how are the Browns going to dig themselves out of this? This is something that Andrew Berry has thought of, and I think he's identified as the biggest problem from the trade is the draft assets that they lost. How are the Browns going to dig themselves out of that? I think it's obvious how they've been doing it, because if you paid attention to their trades, The Browns have quietly, over these next 3 years, or over the last, like, since 2025, 2026, and 2027, they have quietly recouped everything that they lost from the Watson trade. See, the Browns are set, now that they have the Rams' first-round pick, to make 3 first-round selections of their own and then 3 extra first-round selections in 3 years. That means that the 3 first-round picks that they traded for Deshaun Watson, they're effectively getting those picks back as far as their roster construction over the last 3 years. They also have extra 4th-round picks this year. They also got a 3rd-round pick back from the Los Angeles Rams. So over the course, I think the Rams trade goes all the way to like 2029. So over that course of 5 years, the Browns are going to be able to get everything that they gave up in that Watson trade bag, plus what they have from their own draft selection pile, which is their way of digging out the Watson hole. This is the kind of stuff that Andrew Berry does that makes me prone to think that he's good at his job, right? Even though I might not agree with every decision he makes or the timing of every decision he makes or how he goes about certain decisions that he makes from a PR standpoint, certainly been critical of that. Like, I'm not a yes man about everything that Andrew Berry has done. The reason I like Andrew Berry compared to what I've seen in my lifetime as a Browns fan run this team is that it's very clear that Andrew has a process, that Andrew thinks about the future. Now, there has been an unfortunate trend for Andrew that he's building for futures that fall apart before he gets there a couple of times, right? But for the most part, he's planning forward. He's not panicking. He's process driven, which I do like. Even if I'm not in love with what the process spits out all the time, I can admit that there is a process there for what Andrew likes to do. But when you make that many moves, when you get that many draft picks, you're also increasing the amount of things that people have to criticize about you. See, Andrew kind of skated for the last 4 years, well, for the 4 years of that Watson trade because people didn't really hold him responsible for making that move. It's pretty clear that people held ownership responsible for making that move, which if it's true and ownership didn't end up pointing the finger at anybody, I think that's actually a good sign for the team. But nobody really was eager to point at Andrew Berry. Even the folks who wanted to jump on him for his draft history, you had people who would easily defend him because he had no draft capital to work with after the Watson trade and during the impact of that Watson trade. Now it's a little different. His 2025 class was really good. Everybody seems to like his 26 class, and the 27 pile of picks is pretty hefty for the Cleveland Browns. So what Andrew Berry has done over the last few years is proven that the Cleveland Browns do run things by a process. That is true. A lot of people think the Browns just do shit. The Browns have a process and a reason for everything that they do. Now it's time for Andrew Berry to prove that that process is worth a damn. We'll talk about what that means in just a second, but I got to thank my sponsor, PrizePicks. PrizePicks is a fun way to earn cash while you watch your favorite teams. No complex betting rules, just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. Here are my picks for this upcoming season, AFC North edition. Jimmy Bernard, I have less than 475. This has to do with volume available in Pittsburgh's offense. Quincy Judkins, I have over 975. Browns improved line. I think the run game's going to be better with it. Chase Brown, under 900 yards. Joe Burrow equals less rushing yards usually for the Bengals offense. Mark Andrews, more than 475 yards. Lamar's going to need a safety blanket. Check to see if PrizePicks is available in your state. You could follow me on the app at Quinn_C to see all my lineups. Download the PrizePicks app today. Play $5 and get $50 in lineup to download the app using the link in the description. As much as I like what Andrew has done, as much as I can acknowledge that Andrew has made a lot of moves to dig the Browns out the Watson hole, that puts him in a position to either do things that end up aging really well and he gets a lot of praise in the future for, It also puts him in a position for these things to blow up in his face, right? If the Miles trade blows up in his face, that's not going to look great for him. But vice versa, if Jared Verse and what they got back in addition with Jared Verse are able to get the Browns to a better position team-wise, then he's going to look like a genius, right? He's going to look like the GM in Detroit. If these draft classes hit and he goes back-to-back with two of the best draft classes in the NFL, then, you know, the noise about him not being able to draft will sound silly in retrospect. But if this draft class doesn't hit and it turns out that he missed on a lot of premium picks, and people are going to look at him real crazy, right? Andrew Berry is now in the position to show us that he can cook, right? We've been talking about Andrew cooking and all of these things, and there have been some stuff that Andrew has done that has been undeniably good. Now rubber hits the road, right? We're going to have to find out just how good Andrew is. We think that Andrew is a pretty good GM. We're going to have to see how well things age for him, how well trades work out for him, how much foresight has he truly seen, and can he build another team? And most importantly, can he put this team in a position to finally find a quarterback? I mean, if you want to be the greatest Browns GM of all time, that's what you got to do. If you're the guy that ends the quarterback jersey from a GM standpoint, you are automatically the greatest Browns GM that we have ever had, right? Part of the reason that people still give Dorsey, I think, more credit than he deserves in Cleveland is because Dorsey found a quarterback that ended up being good, right? It doesn't matter that Josh Allen was in the same draft class and Lamar Jackson was in the same draft class, and those quarterbacks ended up being better over time than the quarterback that you took number one overall. People are just happy that you didn't draft Josh Rosen in that class, right? Like, that's what people are happy about. So if Andrew can solve that problem, get the Browns to a place where they're competitive, and we can finally build some stability, then Andrew will cement his place in history. Now, that's a lot easier said than done. A lot of times we've been in a situation where we're like, well, if this GM can find a quarterback, he'd be pretty good, right? Like, we've said that for a while. It's going to be interesting to see if all of Andrew's maneuvering is worth it, if he can make it worth it, right? Because what he's getting in return. Because a lot of what the Browns have done over the last few years, it relies on Andrew being really good at his job, right? You trade Travis Hunter and you go back in the draft, that's you betting on Andrew Berry when you trade back, because you're saying, hey, look, I know that everybody's saying that this guy is worth this pick, but if we go back a couple spots, I think our GM is good enough that he can make a lot more selections and get a lot better out of it than just Travis Hunter. When you make trade backs like they did in this year's draft, which I think they masterfully crafted, you're making that same bet. You're betting on Andrew Berry, right? The Myles Garrett trade is a huge bet on Andrew Berry because you're trusting Andrew Berry's evaluation of Jared Verse to be worth multiple first-round picks. And you're also trusting Andrew Berry and betting that Andrew Berry does good things with those selections that he brought in, the extra second, the extra first, the extra third. A lot of what the Browns have done since 2025 is bet on Andrew Berry. And we got to find out whether those bets are going to cash or whether they're going to bust, because a lot of the Browns' future is tied up in how good Andrew Berry can be at his job. He is the single most important person in the entire organization of the Cleveland Browns right now. There is not a person that is more important to the Cleveland Browns' future than him. And until he drafts the person that is most important, that replaces him, which would be a franchise quarterback, that will remain to be the case. But keep no doubts, this franchise, ownership, Jimmy Haslam, everybody has bet on Andrew Berry, and they're betting that Andrew Berry can make the right decisions with the draft selections, with extra money, with extra picks to dig the Browns out of the hole that they got in with the Watson trade. I'm interested to see how that's going to pan out for the Cleveland Browns, if that's going to work out for them. I like Andrew Berry. I think Andrew Berry is process-oriented. I think Andrew Berry is a smart guy. I think Andrew Berry makes very calculated decisions. I think Andrew Berry is somebody who is thoughtful in his approach. I like him as a general manager. But this goes beyond liking somebody as a general manager. This is the entire fate of the franchise is on the shoulders of him, his staff, and their ability to do their job. And it's going to be interesting to see if that bet cashes out, because that is where the future of the Cleveland Browns lies. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.